During the session, please mute your microphone and video off and use your chat box for your questions. Without wasting time, allow me to introduce today's two dynamic lady facilitators, Ms. Dipanjali Dharmaraj, Assistant Director, Academic British Council, India. She has been working on large-scale teacher development projects across the country for over a decade in the areas of project design and implementation focusing on academic quality. Ms. Dharmaraj is particularly passionate about teacher professional development, education policy, and multilingualism. She has a master's in sociology, a diploma in teaching English from the University of Cambridge, and a diploma in advertising and public relations. Ms. Madhu Neopani Bastola, lecturer at the Department of English Education, Tribhuvan University, Nepal. Currently, she is a PhD scholar at the Department of English, the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Hong Kong. She did her MA in English Education and MA in English Literature from Tribhuvan University, Nepal, and MA Tishol from the University of Sydney, Australia. Ms. Neopani's scholarship focuses on second language reading and writing, motivating and engaging learners, graduate research supervision, corpus-based research, and Nepalese higher education. Now, welcome Dipali and Madhu. Now, over to you. You can start your session. All the best. We are here for any kind of support. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody to this presentation. Obviously, as we are co-presenters, Madhu and I will be taking turns taking you through the content for this session. If you have any questions, as has been mentioned already by Motikala ma'am, please put them in the chat. And as you get a question, please post it in the chat so that by the time we come to the question and answer session, we will have your questions that we will be able to take. So without further ado, I hope you can all see my screen. This webinar is being recorded, and please visit the British Council website, Nepal website. The link has been given, as well as, of course, the Nepal website. You will receive a certificate by email tomorrow, and with a link to your certificate. Sorry, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to your certificate, and you can type your name in the space and download it and print it. There will be a feedback form that will be given, and you will also receive this by email. Please do give us your feedback so we can improve future events that we create. Ma'am has already gone through the housekeeping rules, but just in case you missed anything, I'll leave this up for a few seconds. Okay, the objectives of this webinar, by the end of this webinar, you will understand why students often have low motivation in remote teaching. You will know of various ideas for motivating and engaging your learners. The outline of this presentation is as follows. We'll look at motivation and engagement and introduction. Why do students have low motivation and engagement? What can we do to improve motivation and engagement? And emergency remote teaching recommendations. Please note that we asked you to complete a survey before this session. Thank you very much. We received 144 responses, so we were quite encouraged by that. And it also shows how important and relevant the topic of this session is. We have interwoven the results of the survey in this presentation. So like I said, we received 144 responses. The first question was, how motivated are your students? And the three choices were highly motivated, adequately motivated, and not motivated. And there are a few other responses. As you can see in the pie chart on this current slide, 89 responses and teachers said that their students were highly motivated. 36 said that they were adequately motivated, and 17 said that they were not motivated. I have another screen here, so if I'm looking away, that's what I'm doing. And then we asked you a free text question on what are you doing to increase motivation and engagement with your learners or for your learners. And again, we looked at all these responses and looked at certain themes that were emerging from the free text responses. What we found were these four areas. So parents, you are getting parents involved. You're connecting with students. In fact, we really liked one response that said that you are communicating through telephone conversation. With regards to parents, someone said small group assignment programs and contact to parents and children for counseling and work. Then some of you also said that you were providing additional resources. So for example, somebody said, I have posted links, videos, images, and PDFs to increase the resources. Someone else said assignments through Viber, Gmail, and Google Classroom as per the level and understanding of the students. And then finally, some of you said that you are adapting teaching methodology. So for example, someone said assigning them with a simple task in the beginning. So those are the responses that we received for a couple of questions. Like I said, we will refer to the rest of the survey during the presentation. Madhu, over to you now.
Madhu ma'am, are you there?
Yeah, it was muted. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so we will talk a little bit about motivation and engagement, how these two terms are related. Yeah. So sometimes motivation and engagement are used synonymously to mean the same thing. And some scholars use them in different sense, like sometimes motivation is used as a broader term that includes engagement, and sometimes engagement is used as an encompassing term which also includes motivation. So third way of seeing these two terms is motivation as an intention, that is drive to learn, and engagement as action or manifestation. So we can consider in this sense, in number 3, we can consider motivation as a cause and engagement as an effect. So in our presentation now, we will be taking this third point into consideration. So that's why we see motivation and engagement related, closely related, one is cause and other is effect. One is intention and other is action or manifestation. So student engagement mediates the connection between home, school, their peers, and community. Those who are better engaged feel they are better connected with people at school, their teachers, their communities, they're appreciated. And engagement, we can consider it to be hands-on, that has to do with behavioral engagement, and heads-on, it has to do with cognitive engagement. That is prerequisite to the acquisition of the required knowledge and skills. Whatever we intend to develop in our students cannot be developed without students' engagement. So besides, engagement shapes students' psychological and social experience. Here we can think that those students who are better engaged tend to feel good psychologically and tend to enjoy better social life. I mean, a little bit more prestige. They are recognized by their friends, their teachers, and family members also appreciate them. So engagement shapes a student's psychological and social experience as well. Furthermore, engagement, as we mentioned earlier, is critical contributor to students' academic development. Without engagement, we cannot consider we cannot expect them to develop these skills. Students' engagement in this sense can be seen from 3 different dimensions. So as we said earlier, motivation and engagement are interrelated. Motivation is because it's intention, it cannot be observed. Engagement, because it's manifestation, we can observe it. So there are 3 different dimensions of engagement: emotional dimension, behavioral dimension, and cognitive dimension. So emotional dimension can have positive engagement or negative. If it is positive, if students are positively engaged emotionally, they are interested, they feel they are being cared and supported. If it is negative, they feel like bored, anxious, and humiliated. From behavioral perspective, if students are engaged, we can see it can be observed in their active participation, efforts they make, the persistence and their determination in what they are doing. And from cognitive perspective, we can see their cognitive engagement is reflected in terms of attention, concentration, thoughtfulness, and deep learning. So these three aspects of engagement need to be taken into consideration when we think of how we can motivate and engage learners.
Thank you, Madhu. So we asked you, why do students have low motivation and engagement? So the question was about factors that affect motivation. And these are your responses. Again, 144 in total. 99 of you said because it was because of limited or no access to online learning devices. 22 said it was because of distraction. 19 said it was because of inadequate home support. And other responses were things like negative feedback from teachers, excessive screen time already, so online gaming addiction, for example. So kids are already, using devices, and this is an addition to that. We also had a similar free text response to this question, and we looked again at trends and similarities that came up, and this Wordle represents that. So if you look on the screen, you can see various factors that affect motivation for students. One is one-way communication, the technology itself, the attention span of students. Some of you mentioned that you are working with young learners, and so that is a challenge. It's difficult to monitor progress of learners when you are teaching either remotely or online. There are psychological factors. We shouldn't sort of forget the fact. I mean, I don't think we can forget it, but we are constantly reminded that we are living in the times of a pandemic, and there are psychological factors that affect students at this time. Some of you mentioned that challenges are related to finding and selecting appropriate resources. There are access issues, not just in terms of devices and online, but also remote. Some of your students are situated and live in very remote areas of the country. Some mentioned that this is a new way of learning, so that itself presents challenges and can be demotivating. When you're learning something, it takes longer. There are also challenges with regards to differentiated levels, as it is in a face-to-face classroom. That is a challenge. Family support, of course, that has been covered already. Personal attention and classroom management. So online learning, remote learning requires a different kind of classroom management. Some other responses that we found particularly interesting were struggling teachers. No one can become an expert in a new area immediately. It takes time. So teachers themselves are struggling with a new way of teaching. And of course, I mentioned earlier that came up was the fact that negative feedback from a teacher can affect motivation.
Yes, thank you, Dipali. So many ideas you have already specified in the seminar, in that survey. So those ideas are most of the ideas are there. So we would try to see how these different things can fit into different aspects. So to improve students' motivation and engagement. So most important thing we need to take into consideration is that to engage learners in activities they are supposed to do, to engage them in meaningful learning, we need to address their basic psychological needs. And we should not forget that students have inherent tendency towards learning. mastery, and connections with others. That is a quote from Ryan and Dickey 2020. So it says that sometimes we tend to complain students are not interested, students don't want to learn, but in reality, they have that inherent tendency to learn. So, but the most important thing is that these tendencies require support for their development. If they are not supported in course of time, they might die down. So we need to support them. This support involves addressing student basic psychological needs. So there are three types of psychological needs that can be related to the factors, that dimensions that we discussed earlier: behavioral dimension, emotional dimension, and cognitive dimension of engagement. So first factor is autonomy. So students have psychological need for their autonomy. So it means that they need to feel they are learning something that is interesting to them, that is valuable to them, that is they can express their authentic self through their learning and the activities they are engaged in, rather than feeling like being controlled externally. If they are doing something because they think that teacher has asked them to do, they might not be engaged. So their sense of autonomy has to do with they need to feel that it is relevant to me. It has something to do with my interest. It is valuable to me. So this autonomy can be associated with behavioral engagement. That the way they engage depends on their.
Excuse me, could you please mute your microphone? Okay, Madhu ma'am, please continue. Yeah.
Ma'am, you are on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not on. Madhu ma'am is mute. No, I'm not mute.
Oh, yeah. I think now I'm not muted.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Participants, could you please mute your video off and mute your microphone? Yes, Madhu ma'am, please continue.
Yes. Second factor, we are talking about students' basic psychological needs. First factor, autonomy. We said it has to do with the students' interest and value in learning. That is authentic self, whether they see it's something to be valuable. It can be associated with behavioral engagement. And second one is competence. So it has to do with their sense of mastery, or we can call it their sense of confidence, whether they can do the task they are required to do. It can be called sense of self-efficacy, the feeling like I can do it. So this sense of this basic need for competence needs to be addressed for students to be engaged. And third factor is the sense of relatedness. So it has to do with students' sense of belonging and connection. So for being able to engage and for being motivated and engaged, students need to feel that they are a valuable member in their class. Their teachers care about them. Their learning is important. So they are considered to be valuable members. So I would like to emphasize again this: if we want to engage students in activity, whatever we want them to do, we need to address these three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. This can be associated with three dimensions of engagement. Autonomy has to do with behavioral engagement, competence has to do with cognitive, and relatedness has to do with emotional engagement. So if these three level of needs are not addressed, if the students feel that they are just compelled to do something, if they feel that they cannot do what they are required to do, and if they feel that they are not valued, or their consideration, their perspectives, their way of being are not taken into consideration, they will be disengaged, they will be demotivated. So it is very important to address these three basic psychological needs. Now we will be talking about how we can do that. So to support autonomy, we need to consider student perspectives. So what their problems are, what their challenges are, so what they think about the activities we want them to do. And we can also support their sense of interest and value in learning by providing them rationale. That is purpose, why it is important to do something rather than completing homework, rather than submitting it to the teacher. That is the end. But that is it has underlying value. So students need to be reminded that in doing that, in engaging in these activities, they are building up their knowledge, they are building up their skills. If we can make them feel that this something they are doing is very, very important for their life, not only for this completing the assignments, maybe they will be interested. And we need to pay attention to their views, listen to their perspectives, and respond to their questions. So if we can do that, we can support their sense of autonomy. It might promote their behavioral engagements. And supporting autonomy, as I said earlier, interest-driven learning over compliance activities. They need to feel that, yes, doing something is important to me. I'm not doing that because teacher has asked me to do it, but I do it because it's a step in my learning. It's a step in my 100-mile journey. So we may need to different type of interaction. We may need to engage students in different type of interaction to support their autonomy. Some of you already identified that you are providing students with additional resources. So they might increase students' interaction with content. So student content interaction. So it might be learning is a cognitive process. So this content, whatever we provide, may need to be simplified to their levels, but this kind of extra materials are really useful. And student interaction might take place in class, but in this remote teaching situation, it might not be possible. But if it is possible, if they can talk to their friends, maybe we can encourage that. And student teacher interaction is there. So we need to support the students' autonomy to engage them behaviorally. And next is supporting competence. So we need to provide the students with the feeling that I can do something. This is within my capacity. This activity is something that I can handle. So in this case, we may need to provide more support to less competent one. You also identified this as one of the points in the survey. So usually the students who are more competent tend to get more support and attraction from their teacher, and those who are left behind tend to be behind. So we as a teacher need to pay attention to the fact that those who are backward, those who are academically less competent needs more support. If we do that, their need for competence can be supported and they might be engaged. And you also already mentioned that, Dipali already mentioned, in the survey you identified you are also adopting teaching. That is a student need. It also supports students' competence. So matching activities with the students' capacity is very important. So nature, while designing activities, especially in this difficult time, we need to pay attention to the fact that the task itself can either facilitate or beneficiate the learner's task engagement. So yes, so the quotation you can read yourself. The point we wanted to make from this is that the vulnerable ones need more support. Next, please. Then another third factor, we said relatedness. Students need to feel that they are cared for, they are supported, they are valued. So for that, we may need to inspire them, encourage them, talk to them individually, acknowledge whatever improvement they have made, encourage their effort, even if they didn't do something right, even if they tried, we can encourage that. And yes, that factor you also identified, providing positive feedback. So teachers' feedback is very important. Sometimes we as a teacher do not pay much attention how meaningful it is, how meaningful our feedback is to students. So research says that if we do not have anything constructive to tell to our students in terms of feedback, it's better not to tell. So we should be very, very careful in criticizing students. So positive feedback is very important. And providing a sense of love and care, you identified connecting with parents, connecting with the students, getting parents involved. That is how we can provide them with a sense of relatedness. So if we can address these three factors, their need for autonomy, they should be able to see value in learning, their need for competence, they should be able to have that sense that I can do something, and their sense of relatedness. If these three aspects are addressed, they will be engaged. So you can watch the video when you have time. This is Rita Pearson, a teacher from Texas. It was the first video on TED Education Talk. So she says that meaningful connections are very, very important. If we can give that sense that we do care our students, they will be engaged. So that if we can give that sense, we will feel happy, our students will happy, and we can really make difference in their life as teacher.
Thanks, Madhu.
Yes, over to you, Deepali.
Thank you. So on the basis then of that, both on what you shared as well as what we have shared in this presentation, highlighting the importance of building in autonomy, competence, and relatedness into the content, we have some suggestions and recommendations. I was very interested to learn really while preparing for this webinar from Madhu that the term that is being used is remote emergency remote teaching, because we have almost been thrown into it without any kind of preparation, and it's been quite a sudden change to our teaching, both for us as teachers as well as for students. So the first recommendation is to continue to place issues of equity at the center of remote learning plans with increased guidance for special populations. So equity obviously means that, as Madhu has been saying, the vulnerable, differentiated learning, don't just focus on those who can do it, focus on those who are struggling. Many of you have shared how you have gone above and beyond to reach students who have low connectivity or no connectivity indeed. So if you're doing that, very good, keep doing it. And maybe look at opportunities for where you can add that more in your connection with your students. And also, of course, the fact of special populations. So there are some examples here. The text, the bullet points on the right hand side of your screen are just some practical things that you can do. Use whatever is available. So if you have your video conferencing, Facebook, email, SMS, phone calls, anything that you have access to and your students have access to. Provide activities that are accessible to students in difficult environments. There is a list of activities at the end of this presentation. You can just take a screenshot for those of you who live in and work in low resource contexts. And provide different ways to, for example, submit assignments. So can they, for example, send you an audio recording? Can they send you a text message? What are the different ways that you can get assignments submitted? The second recommendation is instructional guidance should acknowledge the challenges and constraints of So obviously, when students are learning from home, not homeschooled, but learning at home in a unique situation that we have currently found ourselves in, there are challenges and there are constraints. You can't do it all. We can't achieve everything. So we have to be realistic. We have to have realistic expectations, both of our students as well as of ourselves as teachers. So asynchronous activities may be more useful than synchronous ones. Asynchronous activities are those that are conducted uh, independently, without not all together. And synchronous activities are like this one, this webinar that we're doing. All of you are here and we're all following the slides at the same time. And so consider, doing more asynchronous activities. And encouraging students to take agency in learning is more important than seeking compliance. So give them an opportunity to direct their own learning rather than giving them tasks to do, where everybody needs to complete the same task. Recommendation 3 is communicate information clearly with multiple audiences in mind. So remember that when you send a task, for example, to your students, you're not sending it just to your students, you're also sending it to parents, you could be sending it to other teachers, you could be sending it to siblings. Who are the different stakeholders in the student's life who can access this information or the tasks that need to be done? So think about that aspect when you're designing tasks or designing assignments. Continue to collect feedback as you already are doing. Continue to engage with parents. Report back to your school authorities regularly. That reporting upwards is as important as reporting sideways and downwards. Correct and share with other teachers. Here is a brilliant example of how you can share what you have been doing to connect with your students and learn what works and what doesn't. I mean, your peers are the best really resource for you. And keep a reflective journal to capture your own journey of learning. It's very important for you. You might come up with an idea, you might do something that you think works well but needs to be tweaked and changed slightly. So keep a record of that. Unless you document it, you won't be able to really capture it, because so much happens on a day-to-day basis. It's important for us to record. By reflective journal, I don't just mean a written journal. Of course you can do that, but you can also record voice notes. For example, when something comes to your mind, maybe you're doing the housework and you remember something. I think just very quickly recording it, even using a voice note, is a great practice. Finally, let's remember people first, content second, and technology third. And of course, the resource and the source for this is on the screen. The link is, you can access that. But please remember that it's the students and you, I mean, your own well-being that comes first. The content and what students have to learn comes second. And then how you are going to deliver that comes third. And let's accept reality. As we are in this current situation, we have to accept the fact and give ourselves credit for the fact that we're already doing a fantastic job and we can't do it all. Let's not expect perfection. Let's not have high expectations. Let's accept that we can't control everything. And let's start from where we are and maximize the use of available resources. And as you can see in the quote, as we are new to the system, our remote teaching can be suboptimal because of bare minimum resources and scant time. Madhu, could you say a little bit about that, more about that, please?
Yeah, I think you have mentioned all those things.
Oh.
So yeah, we
You
need to be
explained it so
realistic.
well when we were practicing, so I remember.
So we need to be realistic, and we don't have any other choice rather than start from where we are and maximize the available resources rather than talking about what we do not have. We need to focus on what we can do. That is what we like, we really like. Yeah, we want to urge everyone to do that.
Thanks for that. Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dipali. So now I think most of the things have already come. So the thing we would like to emphasize is that motivated and engaged teachers are likely to have motivated and engaged students. So our own motivation and our own engagement is even more important than students' engagement if we want to engage them. So yeah, it largely depends on what we do. So usually it is said that students tend to follow what we do rather than what we ask them to do. If we can reflect that behavior, if we can provide ourselves as a role model of the person who is really motivated, who is really engaged in what he or she is doing, students will certainly take their learning in that direction. But if we feel like we are struggling, we don't like the job we are doing, teaching is stressful, and if that stress is reflected, and we tend to complain on things that are not going on right direction, even if we ask them to be motivated and engaged, I think they will understand the hidden message rather than what we are telling them. So again, what we would like to emphasize is that if we are dedicated to what we are doing, that is our teaching, that is the best responsibility we have. We have that ability to change someone's life, to bring light in someone's life. This is not a small thing. So this is great responsibility. We are interested upon that. So if we keep our students' sense of learning at the center, not that we want to complete the course, not that we want to finish up. These are important, but most important thing is how I can address this student's learning, how I can take him or her a step forward. And if we can make our students feel that we care for them, they will certainly be motivated and engaged. We can relate this experience to ourselves when we are students, or we can relate it to our students' experience. So how happy they will be if we can give them this sense. So the final thing we would like to emphasize is that inspiration is more important than instruction. If set, we can arouse that fire for learning, set a spark, then they will continue their journey. So as John Lubbock once said, the important thing is not so much that every child should be taught, is that every child should be given the wish to learn. So our own engagement, how engaged we are, how motivated we are, how much we love our profession, how passionate we are about it, so it will affect their learning. Thank you so much. If you have any questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Madhu and Dipali. We'll open the floor for the questions. Asokji, so could you please check in the chat box questions and raise hand by someone?
Yeah, ma'am.
Have 5-10 minutes we can give because we started late. Okay, little bit 10 minutes late. So participants, you are welcome to give your questions in your chat box and raise your hands also. Asokji, did you?
Yeah,
Questions? Yep.
yeah. I'm looking for the question. The question. Some people have a problem of linkage, and there is a question. When we give assignments to the children, they get help from their parents. So how can we genuinely evaluate the children? This is a question by I think Aisha Pradhan, and so this question is about evaluating. How can we evaluate the children assignment? So although parents help. Over to you. Any one of you can answer.
Dipali?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dipali and Madhu. Yeah,
I
please.
would I would say from my own experience, during this time when you are teaching remotely, it's best to set projects for students to do, where you are clear that it's not a closed-ended kind of yes or no response. where there is a temptation for either the parents or an older sibling to do it, but projects where it requires students to gather information from multiple sources, maybe like a survey or maybe a task that they have to do. That's one thing. And the second thing I will say is, if the students don't find it interesting, to go back to what Madhu was sharing, if they don't find that they can relate to the content, they're not going to be engaged to be able to complete the task. So A, it's about thinking about the kind of task that you're setting, and B, it's about thinking about what the task really is and what the content is. Madhu,
Yeah,
anything that you'd like to
yeah,
add?
I would like to add a little bit. As we said, it's emergency remote teaching. And we also, I think, we have to acknowledge that the situation, whatever we will be doing, will be suboptimal. So we cannot expect, maybe they will get some help. Even now, you got the news, we got the news that even the government of Nepal has decided to give up SE examination in this difficult time. So evaluation, we cannot expect the way we would be doing in face-to-face classes. Maybe they will get little help from someone. I think that is good thing if they get help. And whatever we need to expect, we need to be realistic and see, while reading the assignment, we can see whether they did it themselves or some help, whether this is within their level, we can see that. But unlike in face-to-face situation, I think we cannot be certain, and we should accept the reality, and we need to be satisfied with whatever can be done. Maybe I would like to emphasize, even evaluation can be suboptimal.
That's true.
Thank you. There is a
Excuse me.
there is a
May I,
question there is a question regarding for Madhu ma'am. Can you please suggest some practical ways that we could inspire the learners, those who work, those who are studying in the public schools of Nepal, where more than 50 students study together in such a mixed classroom? What can be done and how learners can be motivated? And although there are several problems faced by most of the teachers, this is a question for Madhu ma'am.
Yes, thank you so much. This is the genuine question, and this requires a lot of time, a lot of thinking, so a lot of effort. So we cannot we might not be able to engage everyone, motivate everyone suddenly. So I one day we go to class and everyone is motivated. That doesn't happen. But what my own experience has shown is that if we really do care about them, sometimes we tend to be like frustrated. We tend to complain. The students are not doing that, not doing this, and their level and everything. Yes, the problems are there. As we said earlier, we have to start from where we are. So considering a student's perspective, so asking, helping them in small ways, like maybe giving them meanings of certain words, or sitting with them and reading their assignment together, or talking to them in their private time. For example, what is the problem you have, why you don't want to study, or why don't you do the assignment, or maybe talking to their parents. We can identify the problems they have if we are really interested, if we really want to promote their learning. Difficulties are there, so accepting the challenges, accepting the realities, we can do something. The first thing, my suggestion, nothing will be something like I give you a tips and that works. It's not like that. So my practical suggestion would be, we do care about them. We want to see from their perspective. If we really are motivated, if we really keep students learning at the center, out of that difficulties, we will find some ways. As I said, talking to them, listening to them in maybe in private time, giving something to read, or reading their assignment together. So that ways, maybe talking to their parents and appreciating what small things they have done. So if you watch that video by Rita Pearson, we have given the link. She said that she had a very poor class, and when one day she went to the class and she said that she just wanted to motivate her learners, and she said that the school has said that you are the best student, I am the best teacher, and they want to show us how we can do things best. And students in the beginning didn't believe, really, is it true? But they were given that hope, and they said that you are the best, just the hope. And first assignment she gave, that was a multiple choice question. Out of 20, they did 18 wrongs, just 2 rights. And she said, instead of saying you have done 18 wrong, she focused on 2 and says that, see, you got 2 right. That's important. You didn't do all wrong. So that way they were motivated, and she said that they were actually able to make change there at the end. I have seen similar thing in my own class as well. So appreciating small efforts they are taking, praising
Thank you,
what
ma'am.
they are
Thank you,
doing.
ma'am. In this
So that is
connection,
what,
I would
yeah.
like to add one more question, which is directly asked to you as well. Is there any connection between correction and motivation? Is the question asked to Mari, ma'am.
Oh,
Once
yeah.
again, is there any connection between correction and motivation? Over to you.
Yeah, there is a lot of research whether correction is helpful or not. But so when we see teachers' perspective, they tend to tell that students are demotivated. When we see learners' perspective, they really value corrections. So corrections are necessary. We should not overwhelm them with the correction by saying that everything is wrong. Maybe we can do targeted corrections focused on certain things on one day and other things on other day. But corrections are necessary. They might motivate. My feeling is that I myself now doing PhD, when supervisor corrects something on my writing, I appreciate that. I get encouraged and I learn something from his correction. So that's why from my experience as well, from research, it suggests that yes, corrections are important, but we should not overwhelm student with correction. Maybe we need to choose something to focus on certain days. But my final point is yes, it is important and it motivates students if we do it properly.
Thank you, Mother Ma'am. I would like to give one questions to Deepali. Children are well and fast learner, but when books come, they become lazy. Then how we can make them to love their study? Deepali, it's up to you. Over to you, please.
Thanks so much. Um, That's a tricky one. I think one of the things is that I mean, books are approached differently by different students. I remember going to my books, history books and geography books as a child. I loved them and I was always very interested. But when it came to other subjects, I was not so interested. So I think one is it depends on the kind of subject. I think the second is, of course, the textbook itself. Again,
Yes.
does the content relate to the students' real lives? Does it develop confidence? Is it too difficult? Is it too easy? Does it promote autonomy? So I think more than just the textbook, I think the concept of the education and the approach to teaching and learning is something that we as teachers can have control over. We don't, many of us don't have control over, I mean, I'm not a teacher any longer, but I was. We don't have control over the textbook, the way that they are written, the way that they are, we don't have that control unless you're part of a textbook writing committee. So to a large extent, most teachers don't have that control. So I think it's about looking at the areas where you don't have control, acknowledging it, but looking at how you can make the textbook or whatever literature that your students have more engaging for them by using these 3 principles that Madhu has highlighted today.
Oh, thank you, Deepali. That was from Rajendra Khadka. He was, yes. And questions from Jonas also. Any better way to assess our students during this online teaching and learning? Both of you.
Dipali.
So I'm just in fact going to put a link in the chat. Many thanks to my colleague Vaishali for reminding me about it. We have on our Teaching English website, we have a number of resources that are related specifically to remote teaching. They include, resources for, in fact, there's one on this particular topic, maintaining students' engagement. There is also one on assessing online. So I'll put a link to the entire page in the chat, and when you have time, you can go and access all the resources there. They're very easy to use. They're just a couple of pages and they're full of practical ideas. So I hope that
Oh,
helps.
Yeah, thank you,
maybe.
Deepali. Madhu ma'am, would you like to say?
Yeah, a little bit I'd like to add. So the 3 points we mentioned earlier, people first, content second, and technology third, we said that there is no best way it such, but what we need to focus on is that what is the most important content that we want a student learn. So every assignment that we used to do in face-to-face situation might not be accessible, so we may need to compromise on the content itself. So focusing on something that is very important and that can be done in remote ways. So like asking them to write something, a reflection or something. So focusing on what is very important. So making compromise in terms of content itself, we need to compromise. In terms of the evaluation schemes or methods that we used to use, we need to compromise. So focus on what is very, very important and finding the ways to do that. So Deepali's practical ideas, I think, will be helpful. So my focus was on emphasizing what is very, very important and leaving those things maybe that are not so important because it's a compromise.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And it's not just about, it's not a lift and shift. We can't do what we did in the face-to-face classroom to online and assess learners in the same way, in the pen and paper manner. It's about repurposing and revisioning assessment so that we're able to use both the content as well as the context for our students. I'm just
Thank
going
you.
to ping that particular, resource in the chat also. So
Okay.
for the colleague who asked that question.
And then there is one link that is in slide number, which one was the slide? In slide 28, this video, this came from a university in Texas. So you can watch it. They have also suggested some ways.
28. I'll just click here. This one.
Yeah, there is a
Scholarship.
link. Yeah, there is a link.
Okay, I can
Oh,
pull that out
yeah, there is a
and put it
link.
in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madhu and Deepali. Also, Ji, somebody has raised hands from the beginning. Durgesh Malla. Would you please check that? Durgesh.
Yeah, there is Pavitra Lama as well.
Okay, we'll take 2 questions. Also, Ji, any important
Yeah,
questions?
yes, we have Durgesh Malla. He has raised the hand, or you could have kept the question in the chat box. Either one.
Actually, there is not the question. It is
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I got link.
hello. Okay.
I will try
Can
to
I?
study
I
on
think
the
he was
link.
asking for the link, and now he has received the link.
Oh,
Okay.
fantastic.
Next,
And
last
I'm putting
question we'll
Masud.
take one. Okay. Ashok Ji, last question we'll take.
Yeah. If from the chat, there are some raised hands.
Uh,
Okay. Can I
ma'am,
speak once?
excuse me.
Please.
Who's this?
I'm asking for a PowerPoint slide, but I think I have got the link and I will read from the link. Thank you
And
very much.
Vaishali ma'am already responded that you will get the recorded version by tomorrow. Thank you.
Is
Okay,
Durgesh?
thank you.
Everyone, yes,
Durgesh.
everyone will get the recorded version, and you go to visit the websites of British Council and NELTA website, please. We'll provide you that in chat. Okay. Also, we take the last questions. We have
Uh,
time.
I don't think in the chat box. So majority of the questions have been answered, I guess.
Ashokji, I had asked a question in chat box. I think you didn't notice.
I think yes.
Yes, Ines
I
sir.
think
Yes.
your question was answered by Madhu ma'am regarding the order of pedagogy, technology, and the content. The question was I think she answered it.
Or maybe,
Uh,
let him ask again.
can I ask? Can I
Okay.
speak?
Please.
Yes, Dinesh sir, you can ask
Okay.
here. Last question, please.
My question is, as you have talked that there's order of people, content, and technology. Always that appears in the classroom. My question is, can there be any circumstance in which we can reorder these 3 components?
So can you think of any context yourself when you were asking that question? So
There's no particular order, right?
this context was put in this emergency remote teaching. So first, students and teachers' well-being are most important thing, and in some situation, students learning at this time might not be their highest priority. There might be someone, I mean, really affected by the disease at this home. They might be in different situation, anxious. So their learning might not be the best priority, and this teaching might not be the best priority at this time for teachers as well. So that's why people first. By this, we mean that the circumstances should be acknowledged, so their situation should be recognized, and then by paying attention to the which difficult situation they are in, we need to choose the content. As I said, that is very very important, that cannot be ignored. And technology, we should not overwhelm students with different types of technology. Whatever we can, maybe SMS if it is accessible, or maybe phone call. That is how that thing was ordered. And can you think of anything? Sometime, I think in school's context, so courses needs to be complete, examination is coming, and we tend to place content first, maybe something like that. But I don't suggest that is something should be. People first, that is my priority, I think.
Okay, this is the last, but the one lady, okay, female teacher, she raised her hands, Pavitra Lama or someone. Could you please ask questions?
Pabitra Lama, I think.
Yes, Pavitra. From the female participants, she is the one who raised her hand. Pavitra ji, are you there listening to us? Do you have any questions?
I think I need to speak, ma'am. Can I speak?
Are you Pavitra Lama or?
No, I am Durgesh. Actually, I
Durgesh
have.
sir, you already spoke, no? Okay, last. Okay, this is the last, final questions, please.
No,
Yeah.
ma'am, actually, this is not the question, but the solution of the problem to all the teachers out there, because we had been facing some problem in our school previously. Okay, like the teachers were asking about how to take the examination online, and in our school, like first of all, we started with Messenger. Then it was a problem. Then we started with Zoom class. Again, there was a problem. Then we started with Google Classroom, and that gave a kind of solution to us. But lastly, we did Google Form. We took the examination of the students, and it was well done, and it was checked, and they instantly got the mark for the students. So I don't think so there is a problem for doing the, let's say, giving the examination to the students from let's say from home itself. But the thing is that like we need to request the parents, okay, or their brother or sister or any kind of relatives, so that they can watch the students whether they can cheat or not. Normally in Google Form
Okay.
you cannot cheat, because you have to just click the next to go to the next question. So it is very safe, and you can even conduct any kind of question you want, whether it is objective or let's say subjective. So that is for all the teachers out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Durgesh sir. Madhu ma'am and Deepali, would you like to add something on this?
I think that he is sharing from his experience, and that I don't have anything. I appreciate that solution.
Thank you. Deepali, do you have?
Yes, same here, same here. I mean, thank you very much. That's a great solution coming from somebody who's tried it, and so that's exactly what we're saying, right? To share solutions with each other. So thank you
Ma'am,
very much, sir.
that's my honor, ma'am. That's my honor.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm going to give a word of thanks. Thank you very much, Madhu
I
and
just
Deepali.
had, sorry, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I had a couple more slides
Okay,
just to share the
Deepali. Yes.
resources. So this is
Okay.
like we promised, just if you have, many of the respondents in the survey were working in low resource contexts. So we just have a list of activities. They can take a picture, and I'm sure, I think, you're going to share this recording with them. So this is a slide of just some activities and projects that students can do. And of course, I also wanted to highlight these fantastic references that Madhu has kindly put together, so teachers can refer to them and kind of develop their own autonomy and for their professional development. So thank you very much. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Deepali. Now, thank you very much, Madhu and Deepali, for your valuable and insightful sharing on motivating and engaging learners in remote teaching. It was a great sharing on motivation and engagement, cause and effect, intention and action of the young learners, sociologically and psychologically. about the factors and challenges of motivation and emotional, behavioral, and cognitive engagement through online teaching. You rightly mentioned motivation and engagement require different types of requirements, such as children's autonomy, relatedness, and competence. You share about the ideas how can we improve motivation and engagement of young learners in learning. Your recommendations and tips are very useful to motivate and engage children for online activities. Information link and online resources you share very informative and useful. I hope all the participants are very much enlightened and they are able to use apply this in their virtual class for their learners. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to both facilitators and congratulate for your effort and time providing very practical session and responding all the queries. I have seen there are 144 participants and they are praising yours presentations. We ask our apology for the inconvenience caused during the presentation. And I
No.
also would like to thank all the participants for your interact participation and patience, and the team members from BC and NELTA working behind the curtain for their support and to make the webinar session a great success. See you all in the next webinar session on 19 June at 4 to 5 p.m. on teaching a course book online. Stay at home, continue to learn. All the best. Thank you, Madhu and Dipali, for your very insightful presentations.
Thank you
And
so
thank you.
much.
Thank
It
you
was
very much.
very,
Thank you.
very
It
Thank
was
you,
a
Madhu ma'am. Thank you.
fantastic
Thank you,
experience.
Madhu ma'am. Dipali ji, thank you so much.
so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
Okay,
much.
you.
bye
Thank you
bye.
so
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Bye bye. See you in the next webinar.
See you.
Ma'am.
Many thanks to British Council for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Okay, many thanks to British Council for this opportunity. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody. See you in the next session. Bye.